Namaste and welcome. It is Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com, and in today's video we're going to be exploring the yogic concept of Ahimsa, or non-violence and non-harming. So when you begin to learn, when you first start learning meditation, when you first start learning yoga, the first thing that you're taught is the first principle of non-violence. Okay, so it's part of the 8-limbed system. So in the 8 limbs of yoga, the kind of 8 steps to self-realization, the first 2 limbs are the yamas and the niyams. So the yamas are the 5 rules on how to live with society for a peaceful mind, and the 5 niyams are how to live with yourself, how to conduct yourself for a peaceful mind. Okay, so it's not about good or bad, it's not about good or evil, it's very much about basically making your mind peaceful, making your mind pure, and that's what we want, right? You know, these days there's so much talk about mental health, and mental health starts and ends with, you know, these 10 rules. If we can practice these 10 rules in our daily lives, we've pretty much got it covered, right? So today we're going to explore the first one, which is Ahimsa. Okay, so what comes to mind when we say non-violence, non-harming, right? The obvious things, you know, for me anyway, are not harming other people, right? Not harming animals, that comes to mind. But those are the obvious ones, right? Now, there are deeper layers to this, right? So what I want to do today is go into what are the layers of non-violence that we can practice, you know, that really agitate our mind. And I'm going to finish the video with giving you some practical ways of how to practice this in your life, you know, in situations where it's essentially difficult to practice them, right? So what we want to look at is, you know, in yoga, everything is holistic, right? So it's not just about, you know, the physical action of harming someone, but non-violence can be practiced at the level of thoughts, at the level of words, and at the level of actions, right? So the action is the ultimate thing that comes out where you essentially punch someone, right? Or you kill an animal, right? But before that would be a word, you know, let's say you swear at somebody or you're angry at someone that hurts them. But it all starts at the level of thought. You know, before I can say something to you, I have to feel anger, I have to feel irritation, I have to feel something in order to harm you, right? So the practice of Ahimsa is very much curbing it at a thought level, right? So not having, you know, not having violent thoughts, but rather when we have violent thoughts, how can we deal with them and, you know, not act on them, but at the same time not suppress them so that it's building up inside, right? So there is an art to this, there is a science to this, and this is ultimately what the science of yoga and meditation is all about, right? So what are some of the thoughts that we can have that are violent in nature? So I've listed a few of them here. These are, you know, I've taken kind of relative to today's world. So, you know, we live in the Instagram age where, you know, we see 1 million people doing better than us every single day. And one that we feel is envy, right? Envy or, you know, jealousy, right? So why is he doing better than me? Why don't I have what he has, right? That is a violent thought. And ultimately it brings, you know, agitation to the mind. The mind is not still. And when the mind is not still, you cannot meditate, right? And then you've got anger, pretty obvious. You've got irritation. You've got the thought of, you know, I'm better than him or her. You know, you see somebody doing something and you're like, I'm better. I don't know why he's doing that. I'm better than him, right? And then, you know, this is not really a thought, but it's you know, one of the words that we use, the words of gossip, right? Talking bad about somebody behind their back. And this, you know, all of this, again, look, I'm not preaching here. This is not about good or bad. This is about, if you want to have a peaceful mind, a very peaceful, content mind, right? Then these are the thoughts that should be absent from your mind. It's pretty simple, right? So how do you actually do that, right? How do you get these thoughts to either not come into your mind, or when they do come in, you know, not act on them, but at the same time not suppress them, so they're building up this negative energy, right? So look, it is the one thing that definitely works is meditation, okay? Because what meditation does, number one, is it makes you aware of these thoughts. Because normally, when we go about in our day-to-day, we may not even be aware that this is how we're operating. But when we meditate and we take, a few deep breaths and maybe sit for 20 minutes, we'll be able to notice what are these thoughts that are happening in my mind, essentially, okay? So meditation is number one. So one, it makes you aware. But the second thing is that it fills your heart with love. It fills your heart with love. So it's kind of like a soap that is washing away all these thoughts. So a consistent practice of meditation is going to be washing these thoughts away, and you start having less and less of them, okay? But meditation is something that you're going to practice on the mat, right? In your own personal time. But what about when you're out in the world and people are getting, on your nerves and you're not happy with things are making you angry, essentially, right? How do you practice nonviolence then? So the great sage Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is the holy grail of psychology, I don't know why this has not happened yet, but this is something I'm going to work on making happen, is using that text in treating, modern mental illnesses, right? Because, these days we live in a world where if you're diagnosed with depression, right, you get on the medications and ultimately you get to a stage where you don't really have the belief that you can get out of it, right? But in yoga, it is taught that there is no trauma, there is no impression so deep-rooted that it cannot be uprooted, okay? So this text, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the great sage, has actually given us some really cool rules on how to operate with people, how to behave, right? So let's go through them, right? So the first one is to people that are happy, just be friendly toward them, right? It's very easy. If somebody is happy, be friendly toward them. Pretty simple, right? If someone's unhappy, someone's not doing well, they're unhappy, right? Practicing compassion towards somebody like this is a good way to go, right? So there's obviously a limit between how much compassion you can practice. If somebody's complaining to you every single day, then maybe there's a time where you take a step back and say, hey, you keep complaining, but why don't you do something about it, right? But people who are unhappy, practicing compassion is really, really important. And then this is, I think, one of the most important ones. People that you perceive as wicked. Somebody you feel that is a bad person, or is not good at heart, or doesn't match your values personally, right? Let's say you're a vegetarian and there's somebody that eats meat, right? And they don't match your values. It's not a good practice to go around hating them, right? Or practicing hate toward them in any way. It beats the whole point. So to people that you perceive as wicked, practicing indifference, practicing equanimity, right? Balance, neutrality is really important, right? So if you don't like somebody, then just be indifferent, not happy, not sad, but just be indifferent. And I know it's easier said than done, but essentially practicing it is what will ultimately give you more peace, right? And this last one I've added for, this day and age, again, because remember, we live in the Instagram age. We constantly see people that are doing better than us. Everyone's success is being thrown at us at numerous times of the day. So when we see people that are successful, a great way to keep a peaceful mind is to feel delight. Because let's say you're successful, right? And I'm trying to be successful at what you're doing. Me getting jealous at your success is not going to impact you in any way. It's only going to impact me negatively, right? It's not going to impact you at all. So instead, if I am delighted that, wow, he's so successful or she's so successful, maybe I can have the same type of success. And I'm so happy for them. That is a huge shift in thinking. It's a huge shift in thinking, right? It opens our heart up. It opens up the spaces for creativity so that you also, can be successful, right? So ultimately, the point is to be filled with love and, not feel these feelings. So I want to end with a really powerful story, right? So the sage Patanjali that I mentioned, Now, it is said that in his ashram, in his monastery, he practiced non-violence at such a high level. He was so filled with love that that energy was, pouring out of him, right? That the animals that would be in his monastery, there would be domestic animals like cows and chickens, of course, but they lived in the jungles. There would be tigers, right, in India. And it is said that all those animals and, the sages and the yogis would live in perfect harmony, right? So the cow would be sitting there, the tiger would be sitting there, and, the tiger wouldn't try to kill the cow, right? Because that love that was practiced, that compassion that was practiced, by those yogis was so strong that, don't be mistaken, it is energy. That energy can come out of you and essentially become a part of that environment, can radiate into the environment, right? So it is said that, in those monasteries, these wild animals and the sages could, would sit together harmoniously. And if we think about that in our home environment or our office environment, that if you fill yourself with so much love, through practices like meditation, then naturally it's going to start having an effect on people around you, right? Your friends and your family and your co-workers. So if we want a more peaceful environment, the number one thing we need to do is make ourselves really peaceful. That is it. So thank you for watching, and I really hope that was helpful. Thank you. Namaste.